Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka from our studios here in London. Over the next half an hour, we'll be looking beyond the business headlines by giving you in-depth perspective on the stories that are affecting all of us. Coming up on today's show, the war in Ukraine is a catastrophe for the world, which will cut global economic growth. That's the assessment of the World Bank President David Malpass, who stresses that the economic impact of last week's invasion stretches well beyond Ukraine's borders, ultimately hitting the poor the most. On today's show, we'll be looking at the existing economic and humanitarian fallout with Victoria Zurevleva of the Institute of World Economy and International Relations, who'll be joining us from Moscow. Olga Lautman, a senior fellow at the Center for European Policy Analysis in Washington, D.C., and Han Tan, a chief market analyst at Exinity, will be joining me from Abu Dhabi. But first, let's start the show by taking a look at how the war is being played out on social media platforms. Russia's invasion has been described by Forbes as the first social media war, as individuals on the ground are able to share real-time reports from the front line. The power that social media has in changing outcomes is only now being fully explored, and it seems that anyone with a smartphone, no matter who you are or where you are, can fill the role of war correspondent. On the business and employment-focused platform LinkedIn, Dara Khosrowshahi, the CEO of Uber, used his post to pledge to keep his riders, drivers and employees safe. The firm will be providing unlimited free rides between the Ukrainian border and Polish cities. Uber will also be making a $500,000 donation to Red Cross in support of humanitarian efforts, and the ride-hailing app is launching an in-app donation button to allow passengers to make donations. Antonio Vitorino, the Director General of the International Organization for Migration, wrote this post on Twitter: "I'm alarmed about verified reports of discrimination, violence against third country nationals attempting to flee the conflict in Ukraine," adding, "Discrimination on the basis of race, ethnicity, nationality or migration status is unacceptable." And then this on Facebook. American actor Ashton Kutcher posts this image sitting alongside his Ukrainian-born wife, Mila Kunis. The pair have created a GoFundMe account to organise shipments of relief supplies to refugee sites in Poland, Romania, Hungary, Slovakia and Moldova. Here in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson's pledge to inflict maximum economic pain on Russian President Vladimir Putin and his war machine is well underway. This morning, a further 2 individuals linked to the Kremlin, Alisher Usmanov, a former shareholder at Arsenal Football Club, and Igor Shuvlavov, the former Deputy Prime Minister, have both had their assets frozen. The pair will be banned from flying into the UK, and no British citizen or British firm can conduct business with them. The two are thought to have a combined worth of more than $19 billion US. They have become the 12th and 13th Russian individuals to face economic sanctions in the UK. Let's stay with this developing story now by speaking with Victoria Zurevleva, the head of the Center for North American Studies at the Institute of World Economy and International Relations in Moscow. Victoria Zurevleva, thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global today. Let's just start with the main point, really. The UK Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has said the Russian economy must be crippled. And I'm just really eager to know, how do you, as a civilian, as a normal Russian living in Russia, respond to this? I've been told that the sanctions are really starting to bite.
Thank you, Jessica. Really, it's I would say that it is frightened, and economic measures to punish this Russian operation in Ukraine and support Ukrainian defense, they may be seen logical and necessary, and we can understand it. But what we can see now, it is not it is not only government that is punished by these sanctions, but more and more the society, the ordinary Russian people. And I think that we see now that it's not only government sanctions, but world business movement in condemnation of Russian actions. And I think that it looks like more and more war with Russian society. And for example, first there were crowds around 80 mayors, but now I see lines in drugstores. Prices go higher and higher and every day, and what is worse, people are worried that they won't be able to buy medicines they need to live to survive. And it is especially frightening for those who are very seriously ill or deadly ill, and it could be really a question of life. And if we take the nearest future, the most severe damage also will be in the sphere of medicine, because almost all medical equipment is imported to Russia, and there is no, for now, there is no effective Russian analogs. And the second thing that will impact ordinary people is unemployment, of course. Surely that will rise for sure, because almost all international companies are closing now its manufacturers in Russia, and it will hit badly ordinary Russian peoples. It means that sanctions intended to deter and weaken regime could end up emboldening and strengthening it, and leaving Russians facing its aggression and being isolated from the world and face to face to its government.
Thank you, Victoria, for that assessment there. I don't know why this is likely to be a controversial question, but I'm a journalist, so I'm going to ask it, because there are, when it comes to war, casualties on both sides. And it's clear that some stories are not being told. So I do want to ask how you, your family, your friends, your peers are coping. How are you doing, mentally? It's been a tough 8 days.
Frankly speaking, it's almost impossible to cope with it. It was shock, but now I think after these 9 days, it is depression. It is depression, and we are horrified, and we are watching this all day and nights. And the most frightening thing that we don't know how it will end. And it is possible that the end for Russians would be even worse than for Ukrainians. And really, it's we are in despair, I would say.
Yeah, despair. Please continue, yeah. Victoria, please.
I think that I'm speaking with my colleagues, with my younger colleagues who are coming to me every day and asking me how we can do, what we can do, how we can live with it, how we can work with it. Is it our work is still worse to do, and how it's very difficult emotionally. And I think that the only thing that we can do is to be professional in our work and to keep on doing our job. And actually, it is very difficult, but it is something that we can do now, because we can do anything. We can do nothing with this operation. We can do nothing with the government, but we can. The only hope for us is to keep professionally in our job.
Absolutely.
And it can help us. I think.
Absolutely, it can help, and I think professionalism is a key word there, and maintain the dignity. And I do want to stress to our viewers, especially when it comes to the media, which we know is the fourth pillar of any civil society, that, listening to both sides and putting out the truth is absolutely fundamental. You've been speaking about watching the news, and it just drives nicely into my next question about the BBC's Russian language. Now, RT, formerly known as Russian Today, has been ousted from British media. Ofcom, the regulator, has axed it because of the polarising news that they were displaying. There were fears that the retaliation would be that the BBC's Russian language service will be ripped off air. I don't think that's happened yet, but its viewings in Russia have tripled in the past week. It does appear as if there are some Russians who do want to listen to the alternative side, because I know a new law is about to be placed in Russia banning journalists from using the word war or invasion. If they do that, they will be imprisoned for 15 years. I think you're going to see all Western media swiftly coming out of Moscow. But how do people on the street see what's happening? We've seen people protesting, but is there a national spirit? Are people behind Putin, or are people just completely horrified at what's going on?
I think that what is going on is the war thing, that we are losing the unity. The society is split into two different groups. One which in some way support the government, less and less, but still, and the other one is which is trying to do something, but feeling itself closed and isolated and very frightened, because oppressed not only by outside but by self-government, but government itself. And with every day, no matter what will be our position, but with every day we are more and more closed from the outside world. And with every day, we are more and more frightened to go out and to the streets and to say something. And we should think about our words. And the trust is very low to everyone.
I think the vast majority of people have seen the pictures of the invasion and are horrified. But in terms of the strategy and why Putin is doing this, I think there are some that have an ear that want to hear it. And I'm wondering if you can shed some light on that.
I wish I know it. I wish I know his game. As just as expert, I can suppose that there were some issues of national strategy, of defense in national frontiers, but I'm sure that the war is not the way to resolve these issues. But unfortunately, I think that the government felt itself in a position when it can, when it feels strong enough to move on, and it feels as if no one listening to him, and I mean the outside world.
We still hope that the corridor of diplomacy hasn't been completely shut off. History has taught us there is always hope if there is nothing else. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you, Victoria Zurevleva, and you always have a platform here to discuss and share your views. Victoria Zurifleva from the Institute of World Economy and International Relations in Moscow. Thank you so much for joining me on Channels Business Global. Coming up on Channels Business Global, I'll be continuing this discussion with Han Tan, a chief market analyst at Xinity, who'll be joining me from Abu Dhabi, and Olga Lautman, a senior fellow at the Centre for European Policy Analysis, will be joining me from Washington, D.C. See you after the break. Welcome back to Channels Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Let's resume our discussion by listening in to some global reacts of the day.
Overnight, a projectile hit a building within the plant site, within the site of the plant. This building, I should repeat, is not part of the reactor, is none of the reactors, is a training adjacent construction facility to the reactors. This caused a localized fire, which was extinguished. Of course, fortunate that there was no release of radiation and that the integrity of the reactors in themselves was not compromised, but yes, the plant in a wider sense. But it is obvious that when we all agree on these principles, words must mean something, and we have to act in consequence. So for us, the IAEA, it is time for action. We need to do something about this. I have indicated to both the Russian Federation and the Ukraine my availability and disposition to travel to Chernobyl as soon as possible, so that these 7 crucial pillars are never again compromised. The idea behind this initiative of mine as Director General of the IAEA is to agree on a framework and on a compromise that would commit to not compromise these principles that we all subscribe and agree to.
Well, for more on these reactions, I'm now being joined by Olga Lautman, a senior fellow at the Centre for European Policy Analysis based in Washington, D.C. Olga Lautman, thank you so much for once again joining me on Channels Business Global. Firstly, your reaction on what's been taking place over the past 8-9 days.
I mean, it's a horror. I mean, I have no words. I am personally both Ukrainian and Russian, watching my cities, my country just being carpet bombed, innocent children and women and elderly being killed. I mean, the images that are coming out are incredible. And I mean, this is probably one of the first wars you're actually watching Russia commit genocide, and it's being played out on social media. And it is just, it's hard to watch. It is really hard to watch what's happening. And now we see the threat even bigger, because last night we saw them shelling, Russia shelling the nuclear plant, and Ukraine has several nuclear plants. And this is, the probably 5th time that there has been danger to a nuclear plant inside of Ukraine. So, I mean, it's just, it is a catastrophe. It
is a catastrophe, and I join you. I think all of our viewers will join you, where it's too much. I think we've got to really be careful about our mental health and how much of this we're feeding, but you just have to watch because it's threatening all of us. And you're right in mentioning the nuclear war, and this is why I want to get your assessment on what Biden's red line is. A lot of criticisms when very early on he ruled out sending troops on the ground. A lot of people said that played in Putin's handbook. How far are America prepared to go? Nobody wants a nuclear war. Goodness, the consequences of that are unfathomable. But clearly these sanctions are not enough. There's still a bombardment.
They are not enough, and I have been warning about this exact scenario all year. I've been, documenting it, trying to sound the alarm, and unfortunately, besides Putin wanting to take Belarus, which he successfully has, and then Ukraine, he also has his sights on Moldova and his obsession of proving that NATO is useless and that they will not invoke Article 5 just because of this fear. So my worries is that we are prolonging something and delaying something that we may have to get involved. The world, I mean, what if Russia attacks a NATO country tomorrow? Then NATO has to get involved to respond. So in the process, we're seeing this indiscriminate bombing of civilians, and it's almost like World War II, where you watched, you tried to stay on the sidelines, but eventually had to get involved. And I mean, I don't know, because U.S. is going to have to be prepared, and I'm sure they are, because I mean, we see what the threat to the Eastern European countries are right now.
Absolutely. Olga, before I let you go, I've got to ask you to touch into your humanitarian side here, because before the break, I was speaking to a lady in Moscow who works at the Institute of World Economy and International Relations, who's broken, physically, emotionally. We've got to be very careful, haven't we, about social media, because we know that this isn't just affecting the Kremlin, these sanctions. This is also affecting ordinary Russians. What is history going to tell us about this?
Look, the sanctions are necessary. They have to go after Putin and his inner circle and Russia's economy. They are going to affect ordinary Russians, but what we all see, the West, we see Moscow and St. Petersburg, which is a facade of the country. Putin has over 20 years with his inner circle robbed Russia, robbed Russians. Russians, if you step outside of Moscow or St. Petersburg, you'll still have 30% who don't even have a toilet inside their home. So unfortunately, it is going to affect them, but he has been the biggest effect on them over 20 years. And Russians right now are the ones who can stop this. They can come out. All you need is 3.5%, which is usually the magical number, to come out, cause a revolution, get that sociopath out of office. And he has done nothing good for them. Only a small handful of people whose names we see who are now sanctioned.
Gosh, those are strong words, but I think lots of people around the world, probably billions of people, will agree with you. Olga Lautman, a senior fellow at the Centre for European Policy Analysis in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for getting up very early. And we saw your cat in the background there as well. Thank you, Olga.
Thank you so much.
Well, for some insights on market reactions, let's speak to Han Tan, a chief market analyst at Exinity, who joins me now from Abu Dhabi. Han Tan, it's always a pleasure having you on Channels Business Global. Now, a week ago, lots of criticisms, mainly from Western media, that we weren't seeing a strong response in Asia on Putin's war against Russia. But we are starting to see sanctions slowly appearing. What's been the market reacts to this?
Yeah, overall, not just for Asian markets, but for global markets, we have seen a mood of, or a tide of risk aversion. Right? And risk aversion has been the tide that lifts all safe haven assets, granted to varying degrees. So that's why we're seeing the likes of gold and the US dollar just surge higher on that safe haven demand, along with the Japanese yen and the Swiss franc. On the flip side, you've got riskier assets like stocks that have really struggled to build on gains with, even though it's a recovery, but overall the bias is still to the downside for equities.
Absolutely. Some breaking news overnight was this nuclear threat that's witnessed a massive sell-off across markets. Oil prices, again, still surging. How high do you think oil can go?
Yeah, that's a very good question and one that I've been fielding from clients and the media all week. So look, if this current momentum persists, I think above 120 is very much in the pipeline here. It just alluded the graphs of Brent bulls on 120 for Brent just yesterday, right? So I think if there are more signs that the West has to ramp up sanctions and sanctions that are aimed specifically at Russia's energy exports.
Han Tan, Chief Market Analyst at Xfinity. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today. But before we go, here are some poignant images that have emerged during this week. As always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions, and I will be back at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global. Goodbye.